Thank you so much for joining us today. You have this amazing Instagram page called Audition Confidential, correct?
That's
And also LA Phil cellist. So can you talk a little bit about your journey to the LA Phil? How did that happen?
well, I always thought I would want to play in an orchestra since I was a kid. I grew up and played in little orchestras through school, through elementary school, through high school, college. I was lucky enough to be part of a youth orchestra that went to Berlin. And I think the Bay Area, growing up in the Bay Area, is very, very rich in terms of music, chamber music at the time, classical music, orchestral music. So I had an early love for orchestral playing. And then I went to USC, which has a great orchestral program. And after that, after I graduated, I went to something called Colorado Philharmonic, which is now renamed as the National Repertory Orchestra. And for 9 weeks, it was like three different concerts a week, just tons of repertoire. So it really was a deep dive into orchestral playing. And I thought, yeah, this is totally what I want to do.
So you went, and then after USC, so you got your bachelor's degree, and then did you get your master's, or you went straight into an orchestra?
I went straight into an orchestra. I had decided by the time I got my bachelor's, I really didn't want anybody telling me what to do anymore. So I decided I was on my own.
Great, great. And were you in another orchestra before the LA Phil?
After I graduated, I played in the Oakland Symphony, which is where I'm from, the Bay Area, for a year. I started taking auditions. I got into the Denver Symphony, which is now renamed as the Colorado Symphony. And I was there for 5 years, taking a ton of different auditions, when I finally won the Philharmonic job.
How many auditions did you take before you landed the LA Phil job after Colorado, after getting Colorado?
I think total, before getting the Philharmonic, I counted at one point 19.
Hmm.
So, and like six of those were for the San Francisco Symphony, but they never wanted me. So,
Uh-huh. So how does that happen? I mean, so you take an audition and it doesn't go your way. How do you stay encouraged to keep going?
I think that what I actually tell my clients now, and I think I was doing it at the time, was every time you take an audition, it's like another step on your journey to becoming a better player. And if you can look at the long run, even though you're really young, sometimes it seems like I'll never get a job. This idea of just putting your one foot in front of another, and you just kind of keep going. You learn from things that don't go well. You try and keep the things that do go well, especially when it comes to preparation. And I think it's just kind of you have to put your head down and say, this is what I want to do. And that doesn't mean that you don't take a break and say, oh my God, that was awful. I think I need to quit. And then, 3 days later, you go, okay, well, I guess I won't quit after all. But I think there's a certain amount of rhythm that happens over somebody's career, and especially when you're trying to get into an orchestra, especially those of us who don't get our first or second audition. It's incredibly competitive these days. But that's sort of understanding that this is where I am now. And I used to think to myself, I know that in 6 months I'll be a better player.
Mhm.
And I just need to get from here to there and kind of keep my head down and just know that as I go through my career, as I go through auditions, that each time will get better. I will learn something and I will end up where I'm supposed to end up.
And don't take it personally, right? When you get rejected.
Won't take it personally.
It's
Yeah,
hard.
it's very hard. You have
Hmm.
to have kind of a thick skin and just keep going no matter what.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard when you're playing an audition and you get that thank you a little bit too soon than you hope to, right? And it's very discouraging. But you just got to keep going, right? And so you took a number of auditions before the LA Phil, and then how did you feel the day of the LA Phil audition when it did go your way?
Well, honestly, I was sick. I thought I had the flu. And so in many ways, it was like, well, I don't care. I'm coming here. I'm going to do my thing. Will I get the job? I don't know. I just want to get off stage without like falling over. Seriously, it was kind of how I was feeling. And I think that when you take away that, like, I have to get the job kind of feeling, and you just like are concentrated on just getting through, hopefully as beautifully as you can, that being in the moment is a huge part of success in terms of not only playing your best audition, but also really like digging deep and understanding like this is what I'm here for. I'm here to connect with the music. I'm here to just do my very best, and I'm here to communicate something to the people who are listening to me. And when you're kind of hoping that you're not going to fall over on stage, it becomes all about what's happening right now. What can I do? And being in the moment. And I think that kind of connection and really almost hyper awareness of what's happening at every second, in a way that keeps you incredibly concentrated is really helpful to actually connecting with yourself, connecting with your emotion, and being able to deliver in a way without all the extra noise like, oh, that shift is coming up. Oh, that was a little out of tune. Oh, I really hope they don't ask that excerpt.
Yeah, I've heard that from several people as well. I mean, a lot of times people that are successful at auditions, that didn't happen to be their best day. They felt badly, or maybe they had a little bit too little time to prepare, but it ended up going well. So there is something to that, right? This idea that you're not putting all the pressure on yourself under those circumstances. I mean, how can you recreate that? Because of course we want to prepare for these auditions, prepare weeks and months in advance. But how do you, on the day of the thing, not feel that overwhelming pressure to think about results?
Well, first of all, when you're taking an audition, you only have control over how you play, period. You don't have control over who else happens to show up. You don't really have any control over who's on the audition committee or what they're thinking about, or whether they have a stomach ache or whether they're maybe mad at their colleague. So there are so many things that are out of your control. So when we can concentrate on this is me, this is how I play, and I look at it as a sort of a moment in time, sort of like a snapshot. How well can I show that this is how far I am, that this is how I play right now, today, not 6 months ago, not 6 months from today. But I use that as a way to kind of gauge how I'm doing. And one of the things I want to think about when I'm going into audition is, I'm just here to play my very best for these 10 minutes or 15 or 5 or whatever. And I'm just going to like concentrate. Now, there are a lot of ways to prepare yourself for that. But when you are there on the day, on stage and playing your audition, that's what I want to think about. I don't want to think about, will I get the job? Will I move on to the next round? Because all of that is noise that does not help you playing your very best. So if we can concentrate on this is my time, I have their complete attention, and I'm going to show for myself this is where I am. And this is really for me. I think that also kind of keeps it less part of like, oh, so and so showed up, or I'm a failure if I don't get this job and all that. So that's all the extra noise I think that makes it difficult to be successful sometimes in an audition.
And should one be thinking emotion? Should one be thinking sound? Should one be thinking technique even on an audition while you're actually playing on stage? I mean, what are we thinking about while we're playing?
Well, when it comes to technique, and the thing is, players today who come to auditions are amazing. I mean, technically incredibly competent and just, and that's the thing today. You have to basically be a virtuoso on your instrument, even if you're a section going for a section job, because the level is so high. So a lot of the technique stuff is something that we work on all the time. Do I want to be thinking about technique when I'm playing an audition? Absolutely not. My job before I get to the audition is to like nail that down as completely as possible. So that's what I want to do, as I don't want to think about technique. But here's the thing. I think that a lot of younger musicians think, oh, I have to nail it. It has to be perfect. It has to be exactly in time. And yes, all those things really matter. But what happens is because in an audition, we hear such amazing players. There are tons of players. I don't want to say tons, there are a lot of players who can deliver that perfect audition. And when you are already at that high of a level, and that is sort of the baseline, what's going to make you stand out? So the thing that's going to make you stand out is your ability to connect with the music, and this is work that you do beforehand. It's like I tell my clients, come up with a story, come up with a feeling, come up with a visual. So whatever can like make that particular excerpt or concerto like, yes, I know what this is. That's all the work you need to do beforehand. So when you have like fleshed out your story and you know exactly what you want to say in a like even a 30-second excerpt, and it comes up on the stand, you look at it and you go, I know exactly what this is supposed to sound like and how this is supposed to feel. So all that stuff is right there, and you just like walk into it.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, so you're think it has there has to be a larger story involved. It's not just executing the technique because the level is so high, right? I mean, that's just the baseline, right? So, I mean, how does that work? How does that process work? Because you're preparing for these auditions, you need to know the extras, but are you actually working to improve your general technique as well along the way? I mean, playing scales, etudes, and things like that to actually become a better player in general, as part of the process, or is it mainly when you're 2, 3 months out, are you just working on the excerpts?
Well, I think that we always want to become a better player, and obviously working on basics, basic technique stuff, whether it's bowing, scales, arpeggios, etudes, all those things elevate our playing, and in order to achieve the kind of artistic vision that we want to, we have to be able to play at a really high level. So that means like really having great clarity, um, understanding how you manipulate sound to create different emotions and different colors. All those things are part of the technical aspect of playing. So yes, you have to always be working on that. When you get a piece that it's like, oh, I have to now prepare this, hopefully you will have played and prepared a lot of different technical things that you have in your toolbox to really deliver that particular excerpt or that particular piece in a way that really says something that elevates it beyond just the notes. So for instance, a lot of times people, and this is where this sort of like staying in the moment really helps. We've all played where we just like play straight through something. And even as we're playing something, we're already thinking about the next thing. And this is very, very common. And, we all do this. But, when you listen to really, really great players, you can see that they are really hearing every little millisecond that goes by. And it's like, that's where the magic happens. Like when they do something at the very end of something, or they take a longer note and they do something in it, they're not just sitting on it, they're like hearing every little thing that goes by. And when we can elevate our ability to listen, imagine, and then execute that kind of playing, that's when we start to like rise in terms of our artistic ability. So a lot of this starts with just your ability to imagine. If you look at a piece of music and you think, okay, well, I know it's in 4/4, I know it's an E major, I see that there are certain rhythms, that's all obviously part of the technical aspect. But one of the things I think that's really important is to sit with this piece of music and then sing it in your head and hear it. Sometimes when we do our best practicing and thinking away from the instrument because we're not then tied to the actual technical aspect of trying to create it. And so what we want to do is say, this is how this should sound. And I'm going to spend some time like just looking at it, thinking about it, like what are the different kinds of qualities of sound? Is it quieter? Is it more intense? What kind of vibrato? All these sorts of things. And once I can really like, oh, that's the sound I want, then I can go to my instrument and say, so this is what we're aiming for. This is where I'm starting. Oh, that doesn't sound quite as good. Oh yeah, if I do this, it sounds better. Oh yeah, I'm getting closer to my ideal. But too often, I think players start at the bottom and go, okay, I'm going to work this out. I'm going to get the notes right, and then I'm going to do this and all that. And technically, they may be getting it done. I mean, they're definitely getting it done, but they have not necessarily gone to the higher end level and thought, what is it I'm trying to achieve? What's the sound? What's the phrase? And then you get really caught into the actual music and you're thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're counting. And while that's all really important, it's the really subtle things that I think separates a good player from a great player.
Yeah, so the details and like you said, having that end goal as clear in your head as possible, bring your body takes you there almost, and it's more efficient in a way, right? It's and does that help you learn something more quickly as well? I mean, if you know what the end result is supposed to sound like with such detail, does the process happen quicker at that point?
Well, I think it happens over a long period of time because I know that when I go back and play stuff that I played for years and years, I hear it differently. And that's the other thing. I think we have to accept the fact that, we're not fully formed artists at the beginning, and we never are. We're always searching for something else. So that's the great thing about playing stuff over and over again. I know people might say, oh my God, Beethoven 5 again, what can I do? But the thing is, every time you learn it, you learn something different, and my goal is to say, what can I do differently this time that I didn't do last time? What am I hearing now uh, that I maybe didn't have the insight to hear last time? Maybe I can think about this phrase in a different way. Maybe if I visualize this, it'll come out differently. So the great thing about imagination is because you're not tied to your instrument, you can do whatever you want. And so I think a lot of times also in when we're preparing this idea of not exaggeration, but like just allowing yourself to like sit into the sound and not worry so much about like tempo or a pulse for a while. So I experiment on different aspects of the technique. Here's the sound. I'm going to really get a great legato or something like that. And I think when we take that stuff apart and then we put it back together, then we have something a little bit different. And a lot of it for me is really being able to put my complete attention on every single millisecond that goes by. And when I can do that, it's like, oh, I hear that note. I see where that goes. Um, and when I'm playing it in time, I've already spent time doing that. It's like, so I know exactly what's happening there. So that's why it's important to take your time and take things apart and really hear every single note, even in a fast passage, and then we can practice it faster, of course. We have lots of different ways to practice something to bring it up to speed or whatever. But the critical aspect for me is being able to take the time to really hear every little thing that you're doing. And once you can do that, then things come together a little bit more easily.
So in effect, you're hearing a split second before you play, like your brain is a leading indicator of what comes out of your instrument, in a sense. So it's like your brain's tracking just a split second ahead. So you're hearing in your head, and then it comes out, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah, and also
Yeah.
kind of also being aware of what exactly is happening at the same time. So when you're
Hmm.
about to make a change, yes, you want to be thinking, okay, I'm going to like do this particular bow change or whatever. So you do have to do that, but it's really hard sometimes to stay right where exactly where you are and then keep a pulse. So it's like, well, how do you keep in time if you're trying to track everything? Doesn't that make it really slow? And
Mm.
I think the key is when you practice it really slow, you have the luxury of time of hearing everything. So it's like, okay, I've given like 3 minutes to this one area or here, like this one measure, and I've like taken it apart in so many different ways. I mean, this is really time consuming, but I've taken it apart in so many ways. My brain absolutely knows exactly what it's hearing, what it's not, and I've worked on it to get it exactly where I want to be. When I play it in time, it's like I've done that work on that beat. I know exactly what I'm doing, and it's my brain that goes, okay, yeah, I recognize that we're right in line here. But I think when we don't take that amount of time, as we often do when we're just trying to get through stuff, it's because we haven't spent the time to really like figure out a passage and like coordinate maybe your right and your left hand, stuff like that. So it to get to that level of playing just takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work. And I know it's really hard, but especially when it comes to excerpts, because we're doing them over and over again, when we do that sort of deep dive, because we've already probably spent 10, 20, 30 hours on it, you already are building upon all that great knowledge and experience that you already have.
Hmm. And you mentioned fast playing, and that I found that very interesting. So when you're playing fast, say 16th notes at 140 or so, are you hearing every single note in extreme detail, but just fast?
So here's the thing, when I am playing, so I will practice something like really close, slowly and go, okay, I know exactly what I'm doing. For me, a lot of times it's just let's coordinate the right and the left hand to make sure it's happening at the exact same time. But then I do these things called there's rhythmic practicing. I think a lot of people do that. So working in dotted rhythms. The other thing I really like to do is like if you have like a string of 16th notes. So I do four together, four together, four together, four together. So when I'm playing really fast, what I'm also going for is just a pattern. And also your brain, my brain anyway, can't think that fast. So it's like da 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 da. And so I hear them as a group. So I'm not thinking da 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 because that's going to slow me down. So da 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 da.
Mm.
And then so let's say we have like four, four, 16 notes in the measure. I do four, 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 four. Then I'll go two, four, 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 two, you know? And so you learn not just to think in those terms on the beat, but maybe off the beat. You know, so this is a way that our brain then, when we go through it, it's like your brain is tracking along. It's like the bouncing ball. And then we just coordinate that with the finger pattern that we've already practiced.
Okay, so you do have to group notes to an extent when you're playing that fast because you just can't think that fast every single individual note at 140, right? It's too yeah. It's a blur. Yeah.
And I think after a while, it's sort of like a measure, you know, you're kind of relying on your physical, you know, the physical memory, you know, and so your brain kind of just keeps track, you know, and sometimes you just don't, you don't want to like, you don't want to mess it up.
Hmm. And there must be an emotional element to this too, because I'm sure these audition winners, the ones that are separated from the rest, are bringing an amount of emotion, and you feel something when you listen to them, right? So yeah, the question is, do you have to practice emotion in the practice room? Do you have to get in that mindset while you're practicing in order to convey that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's called practicing performance, you know,
Hmm.
obviously you practice all your stuff, then you sit down and you go, what is this going to sound like, you know, when I really want to play it? This is where recording yourself or playing for other people is really, really important, you know, and you have to understand and practice this idea of the performance. How is this going to feel? You know, I have my clients come in and I'll say, go stand in the corner. And then I'll say, play this thing. So they have to come, sit down, and then play it. So there are a lot of ways to help yourself kind of to prepare for that. But I think for me, a lot of it is being able to concentrate on the physical. You know, a lot of times we get into acoustics for an audition, like a really dry room or something that's really boomy, or you feel like your sound's not going anywhere. And then because you're used to a certain kind of acoustic and you start to push or you play slower, or all these sorts of things happen. And I think that one of the most important things when we play is to be really concentrated physically. Like I know when I play like this is the kind of sound I'm going to get. And instead of relying on, I'm not hearing back what I want, you know, what I normally hear, that way we can sort of like come in and say, I know this is how I play. I know this is how it sounds. And the other thing is everybody else is playing the same crappy acoustics. So it's like you're not the only one. But your ability to understand the situation and be flexible and say, okay, I can't rely on what I'm hearing. So I'm going to just like pull it in and go, this is how it feels. I know when I'm playing like this is the kind of sound that's coming out.
Hmm. But if someone's scared in that situation, which it can be, of course, a frightening situation, does that seep into the music, and would that kind of eliminate that person because you're not imbibing the emotion that you need to for that particular excerpt? There's fear in there now, you know?
Well, we want to get rid of as much fear as possible. You know, I mean, there are lots of different ways you can prepare for, like I say, different scenarios. But, you know, we're all nervous when we go play, whether we play an audition, a performance, chamber music, solo, whatever, you know. I'd say you weren't really human if you weren't somewhat nervous. But here's the thing. I think what's important is to reframe how you're feeling. So if I'm about to step out on stage and like for a solo or something, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm so scared, you know, I feel butterflies and you know, I'm kind of like feeling like I'm out of my body. One of the things I might say is, well, at what other time do I feel that way? And so a lot of times when I feel nerves, I try and say, yes, I'm nervous, but really I'm excited. I'm excited to go out there and play. And also, when I think about what is the purpose of music, the purpose of music is to communicate human emotion and to find connection with others through your playing and interpretation of something. There's nothing scary in that, really. You know, the fear that we put on ourselves are about technical, you know, what's somebody else going to think? You know, I'm going to fall on my face. So they're all extra curricular fears. But if I say, you know, I want to take you on a journey, I want you to feel these things, and I want to tell you a story, you know, that's great. You know, and when I hear somebody who does that, you know, and I can hear that, and it happens every once in a while where you hear a player and you think, oh my God, that person's great. It even doesn't sound like it's a viola or an oboe again. It's just amazing playing because I'm hearing past their technique. I mean, if we can kind of concentrate on that, yes, sometimes people might make a mistake. Will that kick you out of the competition? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes there's a great player who has a blooper. It's like, not so important. They're such a great musician, you know. But I think that our focus on playing perfectly often is counterproductive to playing with a sense of connection and love, really. Hate to say.
Hmm. And do you still get nervous going out on stage, or are those days behind you?
Not for orchestra. I don't get nervous for
Orchestra, you don't,
orchestra.
yeah, it's just
You know,
part of your job.
it is, but there are certain moments where it's like the cello section, like Mahler 5, famous Mahler 5, excerpt. It's like, oh my God, And yes, of course, you get a little bit nervous because, but the other thing is when you're playing in the section, you're playing together and you're listening and you're like blending and you're fitting in and you have your feelers out. And so I'm feeling the rest of the section. Where's everybody putting this? Are we all moving at the same time? And when you're with a group, it's a little less scary. I mean, you have other concerns that you want to be attentive to. Um, but no, I mean, if I'm playing a solo, yeah, of course I get nervous, but then I try and think about all the things I tell everybody
Uh-huh.
else.
I mean, and to me, the difference between someone in the LA Phil or a major orchestra and someone that's not is accuracy level, right? The amount of or the percentage of time that you are accurate, that you don't miss. Someone that might not be in the LA Phil or an orchestra like that, their accuracy level is a lot lower, correct? Do you find that to be the case as well? It comes down to that a lot of times, just
Yeah,
consistency.
it's consistency. It's the fact that you're playing 3 to 4 concerts a week. You're on all the time, so you get used to it. I have to say, my colleagues are all amazing players, and it is a thrill to be playing with people at such a high level. And what's great is that you just all lift each other up. It's like, damn, so and so sounds great. Okay, I'm gonna like really like bear down and like be as good as they are. And I think that there's this sense of camaraderie and sort of common purpose that we're all trying to play our very best and be together. Um, so I think that's a big part of it. And when you're only playing maybe 6 or 8 times throughout a year with an orchestra, you lose that. You don't have that connection every time. I mean, you can have it, but if you're doing it every day, day in, day out for 20, 30, 40 years, you get it. And it's a
Yeah,
little less nerve-wracking that way.
and there's a mind meld that happens, right, with the people around you over time. Yeah.
Definitely. I got to tell you, one of the best examples is pizzicatos, for all, especially cellos and basses, at the end of a very slow, quiet movement, and the conductor goes like, you think, damn, where am I supposed to put that?
Uh-huh.
But it's amazing because we know each other so well that almost always we can like nail it because everyone kind of breathes the same and you just kind of close your eyes and feel it and it happens. But something like that, I think, can't really happen unless you've been doing it together for a really long time and you're constantly doing it. Because you're right, you do feel each other. You have a sense of not only your section, but like for us, we have the basses behind us. They're watching us, we're feeling them. And it is this sort of weird connection that runs through the orchestra.
And you've been doing this for so long, and also the players in your section have as well. Do mistakes ever happen? From personally or from other people around you?
You think about it, you're giving 4 concerts a week, like 30 or 40 weeks a year. Yes, mistakes happen.
Hmm.
But I'd say, and there'll be like little things where we do a ton of contemporary music. But I think this orchestra is amazing in terms of like just nailing it down, in terms of like making sure, rhythmically speaking, there are very few mistakes. I think people coming, in orchestras and especially younger people coming in are just so well trained and just like I think now it's also a part of the training. When I was first starting out, we didn't have John Adams. We didn't have like really difficult rhythmic stuff, and nowadays, more and more, the kind of things that we're playing are just like, are you kidding me? How do I figure this out? And so in one way, I think that's great because you're not doing the same thing over and over again. At least we don't, there's always something new being thrown at you. So I'm always looking for what's a good way of thinking about this? How am I going to practice this? Who do I have to listen to? So it really keeps you on your toes. So I feel like over the course of my career, I've certainly become a much better player just out of sheer survival, you know.
Hmm. And you played with so many incredible soloists. What makes those people special? Why are they up there as a soloist in front of these major orchestras?
Because I think the best soloists have something to say. Those are the people who can really connect deeply. Um, and they like, I think people at that level just hear things differently. And that's why we are so amazed, is because when you're listening to a great player and they do something, you think, oh my God, I never would have thought of doing something like that. And again, that goes back to this whole idea of really being able to hear at every millisecond going along. Um, and I know that those people work incredibly hard. It's not something that they just wake up and do. And I think that that's kind of a fallacy and something that we think, well, I could never play like so and so because they're just amazing. But what you don't hear and what you don't see is just the hours of work that they put into it. I mean, we aren't always privy to exactly what they're doing to become such great musicians. I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of secret sauce that they're all taking that we don't know about. But I think somebody's ability to just sort of stay in the moment and just take you along for the ride is what makes great players.
Stay in the moment. Yeah, that's crucial. It's so hard to do, but yeah. I mean, is there a certain personality too, meaning these people are just aggressively individualistic, and that kind of separates them as well. They really have something unique to say.
Well, for instance, I can't tell you how many Beethoven concertos I've played, violin, Brahms, piano concertos. Over the years, so many great players. And it's interesting because everybody brings their own stamp. Sometimes people be very, very different. And sometimes people will say, well, yeah, that was good, but I don't know, didn't do anything for me. And even among the players, after somebody plays, some people will say, I thought that was great. And somebody said, I thought that was terrible. It's just sort of like, well, what are you hearing that I'm not hearing? And so we all respond differently depending on, I don't know why human beings like each other, certain people, and you don't like other people. Sometimes someone will say something, musically that will really like, wow, that was great. And other people will do something you think, yeah, that's not for me. So I don't know. I think that's a very personal sort of preference who you feel like is the really, really great player.
And these great conductors, what does a conductor do? What makes a great conductor special? Because it's not just about beating time, right?
No, well, great conductors does what a great soloist does. Their job is mainly to inspire. One of the great things that I think Dudamel gave to us in the opening when he first started was this ability to kind of imagine. He would say, I have to tell you this story. I don't know whether you'll use it or not, but we were working on, I think it was Symphony Fantastique, and I can't remember what movement it was in, but he turned to the cellist and he goes, I want sort of a smoky sound, like cigar. And we go, okay, we got that. And so we got it, and he liked it, and then we got to the concert, and he turned to us at that point. He went, we all
In
went,
the concert?
got it, you know. So this ability to like inspire a moment or a sound or a feeling, that's what conductors should be doing rather than beating time. I mean, at our level, you don't really need to beat time. You want to make sure you don't screw up the orchestra. That's the main thing, is don't screw up the orchestra you know. But a really great conductor can say things and can show us things sometimes without even saying, and we know exactly what they want. And somebody who is very talented in that way of communicating through their body, basically what we do through our instruments is what a great conductor is.
And a lot of this is subconscious, correct? Because you can have five different conductors get up there and it's going to sound completely different just because that person is up there, right? How does
Yeah.
that happen? I mean, is this like a brain? an extension of their brain out into the orchestra? How does that subconscious communication happen?
Well, I think a lot of that also happens over time. For instance, we've had a very long association with Esa-Pekka Salonen, very long association at this point with Gustavo Dudamel. And a lot of that is just we know each other. He knows what he needs to do. We know what he wants, for both of those guys. And with newer conductors, we're looking for that connection. So like any relationship, it takes a while to build it up. And you have inside jokes. We every orchestra is so different, and how they interact with each conductor is very, very different. Um, so excuse me. So I think that sometimes with like a younger conductor and a newer conductor, we're looking for those cues. And somebody that we really like for the first time may not, over subsequent times may not be as compelling to us. It's like, well, you showed us something here, but you didn't follow up here. And there is a sort of weird, I think, how would I call it? Sixth sense, like, is this person real? Are they really communicating something that's important? Is their ego there? What's happening? And because what we do is just so subtle and it's so based on body language and kind of woo-hoo-hoo feeling, we're constantly, an orchestra is constantly sussing out conductors, saying, sort of
Hmm.
I don't know, does that make sense? And a lot of it is when they conduct, we can tell it's somebody who is open and I don't want to say vulnerable, but they're willing to let us see into them. Like this is how I feel. And when I can see a conductor move in a way and give me direction in a way like I can see what they're feeling, then I can like give them what they want.
Hmm.
But sometimes there's a little bit of an artifice, like I'm going to show you exactly this. And it's like, well, that doesn't give me an insight into your brain and your soul and what it is you're trying to say with this music. So,
Fascinating. Yeah. And yeah, that's fascinating how those relationships develop over time, like you said. And talk a little bit about intonation, the importance of intonation. So, how much of intonation is in the hands? How much is in the head?
oh, it's all in the head.
All in the head.
Well, honestly, okay, so here as a string player, I will play, I mean, I will often just like it's tuner day, I'm going to go back to the tuner and I'm going to just see how exactly am I playing in tune, And a lot of that is go, oh, I need to stretch a little bit more, I need to stretch a little less, those sorts of things, So I make that connection. Is this exactly in tune? Where exactly did I put my finger down? So there's that your own personal intonation, which you always want to keep at hopefully a really high level. And then sometimes an orchestra will play slightly differently. Your section, your stand partner may be playing a little bit different than you are. So you always have to blend. You always have to be like, okay, this is where I'm putting it. Is that where everybody else is putting it? So there's this instant sort of recognition. Oh, okay, I need to adjust. So we're constantly adjusting. I think intonation is something that as an orchestra, you're always kind of feeling through where it should be. And the big people who play the best in tune are the people who can adjust really, really quickly.
Hmm. How do you improve your intonation? Is it with a tuner? Is it with drones? Both?
I will use a tuner. I think a lot of time it's just being aware of your personal, like I have a tendency to play, sharp with my first finger in first position. So sometimes it's like intellectual. Okay, I know this is my tendency. So that's the other thing that's really important to know. What is your tendency when you're playing? Is it to play sharp, to play flat? Is it like half steps? Is it like, the fourths, things like that. So becoming aware of your own sort of technical, I don't want to say deficiencies, but tendencies, is really important.
Hmm. Yeah. It's a tough thing, right? Really.
Really tough thing. And also when I mean, it's one thing to tune with strings, but then when you start tuning with horns or, bassoons, sorry, it's a very, because you're talking about really different timbres. It's like, okay, how do I match that? Where exactly is the center, So it can be very confusing and not everybody always plays exactly in the same place. We try to get pretty close. We do the best we can. I think in really, really excellent orchestras, it's pretty more like, 85, 90%, we're going to totally nail it. But, I think intonation is one of the main things that all musicians are concerned about.
Yeah, never stops growing and improving. So when you're playing these excerpts alone on stage for an audition, for example, how do you put the sound of the other instruments that aren't being played in people's heads?
Well, here's a an important fact to know is when you're playing an audition, you have an entire panel, and they're not all necessarily people who play your instrument. You have a flute player, you have a trumpet player, you have a violist, you have a violinist for a cello audition. You have cellists there too. But the key is to know what the context of your particular excerpt is and to know how it fits in. And you have to realize that when you're playing your excerpt, like when like a bassoon player is playing something, I'm hearing my part, you know, and if I have something that's important, you better make way for me. So I think it's really important to hear the whole orchestra in your head, and how you fit in. And I also feel like if I can hear the whole orchestra while I'm playing, I'm a little less alone.
So
So
yeah, so how does that happen? Do you have to just listen a ton to recordings and really get the sound of the full context in your head just over and over again? So when you play, you're hearing it in your head in real time, the orchestra?
I think that's helpful. I mean, it's hard for me to say at this point, having played in an orchestra for so many years, I just
Uh-huh.
automatically hear that. And that may be a little bit difficult for a young player who hasn't had the same sort of just sheer experience of years of playing in an orchestra to hear what it sounds like around you. I think when you're young and you're trying to kind of play things, if you were to play along with like a recording, so you can just sort of hear how this fits in. And I know that a lot of people do listen to recordings of an entire orchestra while they're looking at their part, and that's really crucial. But I would even like suggest you to put an earbud in and then play along because then you can kind of see how it feels, which is slightly different than if you're just sitting there and looking at the part.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's crucial to know like when you're primary, when you're secondary, when somebody else is more important. We are hearing all those things when we're on the committee. It's sort of like, wait a minute, don't play so loud there. The flute just came in. You need to allow for that. So I can absolutely tell when somebody is hearing what else is going on by the way they're playing their excerpt. Um, so I think that such a subtle thing that I don't think I could necessarily tell somebody exactly what to do. But, a lot of it is when you're playing music with other people, you automatically like come to the fore, you become secondary, you give a little time here, you do a little bit of this here, and all those things are really important to have in mind when you're playing an excerpt because that's what happens in real life when you're in an orchestra. So
Hmm.
while it's important to like have really good time and rhythm and stuff like that, you also need to remember to breathe and play music.
Hmm. Awesome. And what is the average excuse me, what does the practice routine of an average LA Phil player look like on a day-to-day basis? You're a busy person, but
I really don't know. I suspect my all my colleagues practice a lot more than maybe that we think. I mean, for me, I try and play every day. I try and, like at least go through my basic warm-up scales, arpeggios, major, minor, maybe pull out. I always play Bach because I think it's just really good. I was just playing something the other day that is normally very fast, and I thought I should probably just play this really slowly. So we do a lot of different things. Obviously, the music coming up is something that's always on our stand, and we want to have a good few days to really like take our time to do it, especially in the bowl, because often during the bowl we have one rehearsal, one concert done, so you don't
Mhm.
have a lot of time to really learn stuff in the same way. So
Mm.
music's coming kind of fast and furious. So that's sort of my, that's sort of what I do.
Oh, I didn't know you only rehearsed once for those Hollywood Bowl concerts. Wow.
Some of them,
Yeah.
yeah, Tuesdays
Yeah.
and Thursdays.
Even if you're playing a symphony, like Tchaikovsky 5 or something, you just one rehearsal and that's it. Wow.
Well, hopefully they don't ever ask us for something that we don't know, but it's usually like standard, like Beethoven 7, Dvorak 9. I mean, and stuff that maybe we had just played the previous season. But all the standards everybody pretty much knows, so it's not like a heavy lift to learn something new. Although I
Mm.
can imagine for new players, it's kind of like, oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're used to it. So you cover the fundamentals every day. You play scales every day and
I
you
do.
do long tone. Okay. So how long does that routine normally take for you? I mean, you got to get through everything, right? Your fundamentals.
I do. I don't know that I'm always really good about it. Um, if I were to sit down and really do the whole thing, it'd probably be at least 15 minutes, but
Mm.
at the end of that 15 minutes of scales, arpeggios, you know, really slowly and fast, and I do it at different tempos. It's good at 15 minutes, but then I'm ready to go, you
Okay.
know,
Yeah, and
anyway.
then you're learning the repertoire. And how does the learning the repertoire work? So are you practicing next week's pieces this week, and you have to look ahead a little bit, or?
Well, no, I'm actually practicing for Friday right now. Next week, I have no idea what we're doing. I'll look
Okay.
at that on the weekend. I mean, during a regular week, though, obviously they have at least 3 weeks out. So everybody goes, they looks at their part. You go, okay, I know what I need to practice. We all get our parts. So, usually 1 to 2 weeks ahead of time, you kind of know what's coming up, and you have an idea like what your practice schedule is going to look like.
Hmm. Okay. And a lot of people talk about the importance of having a good tone, especially in auditions, right? Because you don't want to have a harsh tone or a brittle tone or something that's offensive. So if you have that and you're someone that wants to improve your tone, how does that happen? How can you actually improve your tone and make it more pleasant, more beautiful?
Hmm. Well, I think it's a little bit different maybe for wind players versus string players. I mean, you always want to have a pleasant sound. I think for us, it's really a range. You really want to have a wide range. How loud can you play without like cracking the sound? How soft and beautiful? A lot of that is, I mean, it's all in your bow control. So I would say, understanding how to have a note continue on or to have variation within it is part of like, for me, the imagination. Um, so sound and imagination to me are hand in hand. I don't ever practice tone separate from music. To me, music is sound is tone.
Hmm. So it starts in the head. You have to have the perfect tone for that particular piece of music in your head, and then it starts to come out through your instrument.
Yeah, and I think also, everyone has a particular, oh, if I physically, this is how this feels. That's always the starting point for all musicians. Like, yeah, okay, I know I can get this sound to want it a little louder, a little softer, a little more vibrato, a little less, all those sorts of things, close to the bridge, far away from the bridge, those are endless sorts of variations. So the idea of a good tone for us doesn't really exist unless you, you don't know how to manipulate sound. So yeah, manipulating your sound and being able to have as many different colors is something that I think we all strive for.
Hmm. And lastly, just talk a little bit about being in the LA Phil. Is this a career that you would recommend to people, and do you love it?
Okay, it is probably the best job in the world. I have
Hmm.
to say, I feel incredibly blessed to have won this job. Um, it's not easy. It's really hard. Physically, it can be very taxing. You have to stay in good physical shape for one thing. The schedule can be brutal. And yes, there will be times and weeks where you think, oh my God, I can't stand this conductor or this piece or whatever. And so there's a lot of sort of self-regeneration, I want to say, that goes on in a career that lasts as long as mine in one particular orchestra. Um, but I have to say, there are moments on stage that are really not you cannot repeat them anywhere else. I just don't know in what other place I would feel, when you're playing in the Musique Verein and you're doing Mahler 6 and you're like right there and you think, oh my God, here I am. I'm playing Mahler 6 where Mahler used to conduct in this amazing place. I mean, that's like a real pinch me moment. It is really so thrilling. And not only that, the actual thing, but when the orchestra is like really all of one mind and it is happening, there's no other feeling to be sitting on that stage and to know you are making an incredible musical statement, an artistic statement, a powerful statement. And to be part of that is unbelievably special, just sort of mind-blowingly special to be able to do that, as many times a year as we are able to do that. And it doesn't happen every night. It happens often enough you think, oh my God, I cannot imagine any other career that would give me this kind of like personal satisfaction that would push me to my absolute max, that would exhaust me, that would thrill me as playing in an orchestra at this caliber.
Yeah, and emotionally, it's taxing as well, right? Because you have to be constantly on. So,
Yeah, but you learn how to deal with that, you know.
mm,
You definitely learn, how to turn it on, and that's the one thing as a professional musician is like 8 o'clock comes, sit down. It doesn't matter what else has happened in your life, you perform and you go into that mindset, and you have this instrument of your body and your instrument, you know what you have to do. Um, and that can be a really great thing sometimes. So
mhm. And you're always pretty much in the moment. I mean, when you're in that performance, you're in that performance. You're not thinking about necessarily what's happening afterwards or what you're going to eat after the concert or depends.
it depends, I mean, there are certain pieces that just take, 110% of your time, your ability, your, just your energy. And there are other times where, it's not a lot. For instance, we had this concert last night, which was not hard at all, a lot of long notes, but I'm sitting there and thinking, oh, this sounds really nice, I can really work on just making this sound really beautiful. I just, and so you kind of learn to kind of stick with what you're doing, no matter what it is. If it's a pizzicato, if it's just a long note, I might be thinking, oh, I'm just going to turn that bow around. Oh, that was good, and
Mhm.
things like that. So I try and stay in the moment. If it's really bad, yeah, I think, when can I get a beer?
Uh-huh. Right.
Generally, not.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the time, Gloria. Really, really appreciate it. And there's some amazing answers in here that are going to help a lot of people. So really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Nick.
Oh, you're welcome.